Well, hello everyone, and welcome into our program tonight. Watchtower Insider Tells All. Barbara Anderson coming in from Tennessee. We're looking forward to the program tonight, and we're going to talk about her trek in the Watchtower when she was a Bethelite. So we're looking forward to that. So let's bring Barbara on right now, and let's add it to the stream. Hello, Barbara.
Hey, Rick.
So there we go. So it looks like we got to go here anyways. We finally got you on, and that's good. But don't you worry. We're doing things in the right way here now. We got everything all straightened out. So anyways, we all know that you were in Bethel. And what was that? What year were you in the Bethel Watchtower in Brooklyn?
We went into Bethel in June of 1982. That's a long time ago.
Oh, it is a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at a tape today. I was hoping to be able to play. As a matter of fact, maybe I can find it during our broadcast, but it was a tape of what a Bethelite experienced when they were in Bethel in the 80s, and how you'd be called down to the dining room, and in the morning you'd have your morning meeting, and then you'd all go off and do your work. And I believe it was Ciro Alessino. Did you know him?
Oh, yes, very well. I'm a little hoarse today. Yes, I worked with him in writing. He was in research. He was the fellow that the writers went to and I went to, and we wanted to get a book from the library. You know, that was the days there was no Google. So you had to do the research yourself and look for books that he would get from Midtown Manhattan Library.
Right. So, yeah, so I don't have that clip, but anyways, I thought it was kind of neat. I thought you might like to see it. And, but anyways, you and I can just discuss some of the events that took place at Bethel and what it was like. So what I'd like to do tonight, Barbara, is I would like the audience to really come to grips with what it was like at Bethel, what it really was like, and how everything was working out at Bethel's. Why don't you tell us what the average day was, what time you got up in the morning? Why don't you tell us that?
Oh, so we got up around 6 because I didn't have to make breakfast. So all we had to do was either shower then or at night, and then get dressed and head out the door to the dining room. I had to be there at 7. Then they had the text. So that was approximately 15 minutes, if I remember correctly, because that's a long time ago, as I said. So then they had the breakfast. Of course, it was wonderful for we women. We didn't have to provide the breakfast, and then you have waiters waiting on you. So that was nice. And then the prayer in conclusion, and off we went to work. But the text was interesting, and then they made announcements too. So it was nice. I enjoyed it very much. There were 10 at the table, by the way. There were 10 at the table, and there were a table head, and that had to be a Bethel elder. My husband was a Bethel elder. So they would kind of watch over for the young men. 75% of Bethelites back then were young men. So the table head was usually a mature man, and so he would keep his eye peeled if there was anybody who wasn't making it to breakfast, because that was really mandatory unless you were ill. So if they regularly didn't make it to breakfast, then they would speak to the individual. So there were really a lot of rules, but for specific reasons. I could tell it worked, when you had that many people that everybody was so different. They had so many different backgrounds. But if you came from another country, you usually were an experience, because if you come from another country, usually from another Bethel. So the requirements were generally the same in all the Bethels. And so it wasn't anything new for a visitor, a Gilead, somebody who came to Gilead. They would fit right in because they very familiar with the branch wherever they came from, generally.
Yeah. So in other words, so you had to be down. You had to get up. Well, what time do you have to be down there for breakfast? 7 or 6? Did you say
7?
7? So all the Bethelites would be there. I mean, was it mandatory that you had to be there for breakfast?
Oh, yes. Unless you were ill, it was mandatory. That was a
Yeah.
very important time of the day, because that's when they had the text, and the text was discussed by the person who was in charge for 1 week. Was Bethel Elder, usually one of the governing body, and when the assistant arrangement came in, one of them. But it was three Bethelites every morning. Generally, the ordinary Bethelite was assigned the text, so they would do a little talk. I think it was a minute. We had a minute, so we had to take that day's text and try to make it interesting. So then this one in charge of the table head that morning, the table head there was many dining rooms too when I was there. And so you had the main dining room was over in the 124 building, and that's where if I'm remembering correctly, and that's where the head sat, and then it went out over the speakers to the other dining rooms, and they eventually got a TV in all the dining rooms. So
So were you there when they had that TV monitoring system where they were
yeah.
counting down? Yeah. I know.
I'm afraid I have to interrupt, or forgive me for interrupting, but the sound is not happening for our Barbara. Barbara, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but you're not being heard.
On what?
Something's going on.
She's not being.
I was on YouTube, watching you on YouTube, and people in the chat are saying they're not hearing the sound, and I couldn't hear the sound. But as a phone call, I'm hearing Barbara. So there's something on your end that needs to be connecting her sound for your audience, and I don't know what that is. I'm so sorry, Miss Barbara.
Well, no, that's all right.
Everybody wants to hear you. Everybody wants to hear you. There's just one technical difficulty.
Well, you sure it's not on your end? I mean, everyone's saying that in YouTube. On YouTube, folks.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
Hey, Rick, this is Eric, and I left YouTube because there's no audio there's audio for you, but there's no audio for Barbara. But I can get audio on the phone.
Well, we've got we've got people on here saying that we got people on here saying that there is audio. I hear Barbara perfectly. I can hear her fine. So reset your YouTube and then re-click into Rick's program and my program. So do that. So it's on your end. There's people in here that can hear Barbara. So don't worry, Barbara. That's
Glance over at the chat every so often, then I'll let you go.
Well, try it, Apostle Babe, and then tell us if you got it, okay? Because we want to be able to hear Barbara. So that's what you want to do. Just reset it and then come back in again. Reset your YouTube. Everyone's saying they can hear her just fine. Yep.
My mistake. Okay.
No problem.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Okay, Barbara. So anyways, we'll get you back to the sorry, but no, you've been heard. It's just a few people had some difficulties at first, but reset your YouTube and you'll be able to hear Barbara. We want to make sure, Barbara, boy, I'll tell you, when we have you on, it's very important. You're very important to this network and very important in giving. They are listening on the wrong YouTube channel. They're listening in on the wrong YouTube channel, probably.
Let's see.
I don't know what it is. I get, so many different mixed messages. I can't hear on here. I can't hear on the suite. Then they come back and say, I can hear. You guys are going to cut me some slack, let me just hold on 1 second here. We got a preview evidently. Hold on. Well, maybe this will end it right now. Let's see if we can't do this. It might be, maybe I did something here that one of our other previews was still running. So let's stop that and let's reset and go to this one. Okay, so that's what was going on. I have a number of programs going on here at once, so I don't want to get into all the technical aspects of it for you guys, but anyways, just stay in with us. You should be fine now. It should be fine now. But we're getting the bugs worked out here. You know, it's technology is fine. Sometimes it can be a little nutty, but anyways, yeah, we should be all set now. Things should be in good shape. So anyways, Barbara, let's go back to Bethel. Let's go back now. You wanted to, did you have a desire? Was that your goal to go to Bethel?
Well, I was a convert at 14, and I lived 30 miles from Bethel. I was in Long Island. So the woman that studied with my mother and I, she came from Brooklyn originally. She moved to Long Island because her husband took a job with Newsday. He was with I think the Daily News in New York City, and then he switched out into Long Island, and they were living just a few blocks from us. And she was a pioneer, and her daughter was her adult daughter was a pioneer. So first thing they did after we were studying for 6 months is arranged for dinner at Bethel. So we went and we got acquainted with Bethel. And so it was part of, wasn't unusual for me. And then when I went 1958 to work at the factory, just as a volunteer to type in the rooming arrangements for the big convention. I've said this before here. So I was there every day for weeks. We didn't stay there. We stayed in our own apartment in Long Island, myself and 2 other girls. We came from Miami. That's where my family moved from when I was 16. So by the time I was in my late 17, finished education, and we heard that they needed people, and we went. And so I was very familiar then. And that's when I met Joe, too, the same year. So then I was in and out because I was seeing him and got engaged to him. So it was a very familiar. And Joe and I both talked to our son after a while about going to Bethel. He knew about Bethel from day one, I think. You know, I always laughingly say that in Long Island, the mothers say to their kids, when you grow up, you're going to be a doctor. But I said, when you grow up, Lance, you're going to be a Bethelite. So that's how he lived. And so they took him at 19 when he was put in his application. It was earlier. You could go earlier. When I was, I don't know how many years later they switched the age. But so he pioneered after he came into school. So as he turned 19, he put his application, and that he went in 1981. You know, that's like 40 years ago. And time flies when you're having fun. And it was an adventure.
Well, let me say this now. Did you really have, now let me just ask you some questions here about fun. Was it really fun being a Bethelite, Barbara? Was that a fun experience?
Yes, it was a fun experience, even though every so often it wasn't fun. But generally speaking, it was. It was good, marvelous people, if you're a people person. Now, if you're not a people person, that Bethel would not fit. Yeah. So, but I am a people person. So is Joe. In fact, one of the overseer in writing who was signed the Proclaimer's book, his wife wasn't very much a fun person. It was very hard on her. She had been there years. It was very difficult. She found it very difficult to talk and be friendly. And eventually it showed on her. She was became a witness in the city. She was a New York person, but she became a witness when she was 20 or something like that. And she was in the same congregation when she became a witness as he was assigned when he was young. And so they became, interestingly, he was engaged to a girl, a witness girl in California, and she broke off the engagement. So he got interested in this gal. And as I said, she was a new witness, but she also, you would think she would have loved being at Bethel, but she didn't. And she was there for years. Every so often she had to leave, and she would go somewhere for a month or two because they needed him so desperately that they would make arrangements. She made her own arrangements. She'd go off. They did that for people who were at Bethel.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure there's some people there that were very, very valuable, and I mean, they really needed them, Barbara.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they would really do everything in their power to keep them there. I'm sure you and Joe were in that class.
Joe was. No, I came in as excess baggage.
Yeah. Well, now wait a minute. I wouldn't say excess baggage. I hope they treated you okay over there. They treated Joe good, but they didn't really pay much attention to you, or what?
Well, when you came into Bethel, you filled out a medical card. They introduced you to the infirmary where if you had medical problems, you could see a doctor. And then all the new people, they came in to Bethel almost daily. There was like a group of 6 that maybe came in on a Monday or Friday or whatever. And so it was constantly that way. Because remember, this is that time there were 4,000. I was just in the city alone. And so it was turnover. So they had a procedure to follow. And you got your assignment. But you filled out this medical card and you saw the infirmary. And of course, in the medical card, you said what you were allergic to or problems. And I said, I cannot be around industrial chemicals. And I can't, I'm allergic. I've always had a problem with that kind of thing. And you know where they put me? With industrial chemicals. And so nobody read the card. I don't know why back then they didn't do that. And by 2 months of being around, I was in tape duplicating. That's back then. Then we women, we excess baggage women who the husbands were needed, the men were needed, the women were not, except for housekeeping, or if she had a very special something they really needed that she knew how to do. So nobody asked what my specialty was, and because I was 42, then I went with all the other women of that age to this place called where they made these cassettes, tape duplicating. So it's interesting. I just heard last week. It's amazing. That's 40 years ago. And I just heard last week there was the overseer at that time was a fellow, I'd say he was in his 30s, somewhere in his 30s. And he had at least 35 women under him he had to work with us all. We were all the newer brides who were signed there. Everybody who came into Bethel had to learn housekeeping, though. They did, even the men. The first few days before you went into your assignment, you had to go through a little course. And even the men had to see how to make beds. I actually fold up my pillowcase or deal with my pillowcase to this day, and so does Joe, because we learned at Bethel how to take that end of the pillowcase, which is open after you put your pillow in it. There's a certain way to fit it in there. And to this day, we do our pillowcases like that. Why do I remember that? Because I like it. I liked it. And so guys had to learn that. They
Well,
wanted
it was kind of like the military. You kind of so you had to really make your bed a certain way. The pillow had to be in a case the way it's supposed. Oh, who checked it? I mean, was there anybody checking it?
yeah, the housekeeper on the floor, that particular floor where the new ones came in, she usually took your group, like I say, 6 or so, and took you into a one of the rooms and display room, and then they showed you. And maybe the next day it would be another housekeeper would be assigned a group, and they did the same thing over and over again. They wanted especially the young men, to not take for granted what the housekeepers did. They weren't the slaves of the men, that's for sure. And you had to get your garbage out of your room in the morning. So usually, if there was a husband and wife team, if it was 2 guys in a room, they had to take the garbage out to where the elevators were, and that's where the garbage cans were. And for waste stuff. I'm not talking about apple skins and things like that. So if the room was a real mess, when you left in the morning and your room was a real mess, you would hear about it because she would report you to the overseer. And so the guys had to keep helping too. So I like that. I thought that was a great arrangement. But some funny things, though, that the housekeepers would tell us about, which I'm not going to tell here. But what people left in their rooms was almost funny. But it was nice. It was nice. We all had a commonality, which was bound us together, and that was our faith. And
well, hold on one second before we move on here. I just want one question to ask here because I see they're asking about it in the chat room here. Now, do you think these housekeepers? You think they would snoop around? You think they were looking for anything that might be a little nefarious, or maybe they could report you guys on, like maybe finding a lost date book or something?
Oh yeah, sure. And if the guys had pornography or racy magazines, that got reported. You usually you had a big closet. Every room had a nice sized closet, and you locked your closet usually in the morning if anybody had that. But they did, because that's one of the reasons that young men are asked to leave, for that very thing. And so they were like substitute parents. The Bethel, the overseer, the home overseer. See, there was many of the buildings. They were each building, Towers building, 124 building. They were called homes, and so there was an overseer over each of the homes. And there were very strict rules. You got a booklet when you first came in too, that you had to read the rules. And when you left Bethel, you left the booklet. I don't know why, but that was the rules. And they were strict, but they had to be. These were all strangers. We all came from different ways. I mean, some boys and girls are not that great at housekeeping. By the time they leave Bethel, they're great at housekeeping. But it depends on the parents. So how they train the kids. I thought that was a very nice arrangement because it made them matured the young men for the future, in their own personal lives. Bethelites usually make good husbands, very helpful husbands.
Yeah, let me jump in here, and we're on this subject. Now, it was your own room, and younger ones there, they couldn't, of course, be in a room with a female if they were male. But now, suppose they wanted to have a little get together in their Bethel room, a little party on Saturday night or whatever. I mean, could they have the opposite sex in the room with them?
Oh yeah, but not alone. If you had somebody, the opposite sex, you have to leave your door open if it's just the two of you. That's a rule all over Bethel, even in the offices. Actually comes from Russell's day. It comes from something that was called the vow. And that was, I don't know, I can't really remember. I'd say about, I'm thinking around 1904 or 5, somewhere in there. Somebody might remember. And that caused quite a stir in the organization. The elders back in those days, they had to take the vow, and that was part of it. It was quite a long vow about how behavior, but there was a one little liner in it that said, if you can't be in a room alone with someone of the opposite sex, you have the door open. So even in the offices, when I go into, so many of the offices had cubicles, so that was not a problem. But in the writing department, everybody had a private office. And so you have to go into somebody's private office and you're working on something together. Normally, years ago, they required them to leave the door open. But in the writing department, they didn't require them. I wondered about that because I knew that rule from years before, because when I dated Joe, and he and his roommate would have a few of us girls over, you know, I knew the rule. But in the writing department, I guess they figured that these men were older and very mature, so nothing would ever happen. But I've been in plenty of offices with the door closed, but nothing happened.
Well, it's pretty much, Barbara. I mean, even in the witness world today, they're so paranoid that, you know, a woman and a man, they might, you know, just start going at it. I mean, when there'd be no reason to. They almost think that it automatically would happen, and it really doesn't. It really, really doesn't. Men and, you know,
absolutely, I agree with you.
I think they go overboard on that, and I can. In fact, even it was strange because I'll tell you, I moved up here from Florida back to Massachusetts, and it was a snowy day, and I was staying with another person until we got settled in our house. And I was staying with another witness family. And my two young daughters, they were 17 and 18, they were pioneers. And we were staying in the house with a family, a witness family, and they had an 18-year-old son. And my daughters grew up with him. I remember he was just a little baby. And so all of a sudden it's time. He was a pioneer. My two daughters were pioneers. So anyways, it's time for them to go out and service. So I remember this as long as I'll live. It was so ridiculous. So anyways, I says, okay, Jimmy, so you can take the girls down to the Kingdom Hall. So the mother that we were staying with, oh, no, Brother Farron, no. Jimmy and your two daughters cannot be in the same car. I mean, there was no romantic connection. He was just a friend of theirs all of their life. Oh, no, that would be wrong. He can't be in the same car. So I had to, go like 15 miles out of my way to accommodate. So I'm following him down. He's in front of me and I'm in back of him driving. Isn't that foolish?
Well, I think so. When I became a witness, the guy that, I'm trying to think, that's when they had servants, so this was a Bible study servant or something. And at the book study, he connected the book study I went to. Anyway, when I go out on Saturday morning, if nobody showed up, he was a married man, and we went out in service together. Now, that is not something I recommend. He was a very fine man, and but I wouldn't recommend that today. Things could be different, and even then it could be different, because that's why we have this whole deal with the child abuse, because some people don't know how to stay in their place. And but I never had a problem that way. But I thought about that later on. It could have been a problem because some of men would have taken advantage of a 16-year-old, even as witnesses, because I know of cases that doing what I do. So
Yeah, no, listen, was no at Bethel, and we're going to hone right in. I want to put people in Barbara's shoes, walking around Bethel and being a Bethelite. What was there hanky panky? I mean, going on? Did you witness any hanky panky between the two sexes going on there?
I never witnessed any. I heard about some, but I never witnessed.
Oh, you weren't part of that. You weren't part of that two witness rule, right? Jeez.
Well, there was one case that it was a no, okay. They've been there years and years, and he was overseer over the kitchens. So he had a very responsible position because you had a number of kitchens. You had a lot of people, and he was overseer also. But he was such a nice man. But his wife, she was wonderful too. I'm not criticizing her, but she'd been there years and years. And you know, when you're at a place so many years, it's all hat to you, and they know all the people that matter. You know, they don't all know the young boys that come in, and but they get to know the older ones, especially if they have a special something special that they, as far as a job, and they come in, and so she knew that, and she told me too. I don't know why she told me that day, and she told me about this woman who came in with a very special job, and she'd go off instead of doing her job. She would disappear for an hour or two with one of the overseers, and it was true. It was true. I knew about it before it came out. You really don't know what to do because I wasn't a witness to anything, and she had been around a long time. She could have told her husband, and they would have done something. So this, you know, it's you more carefully when you're a new person or newer. You have not a lot of control when you're newer at Bethel, like a new job. You have to feel your way along, get to know the people. You know who the ones are that you have to be careful around, not because they're going to hurt you, but that maybe they are not your type of person. And there are gossipers everywhere, and there are troublemakers everywhere because there are people, you know, people are people. And so you're thrown in with all these different people, and I don't mean to sound like a complainer. I'm just realistic, but I had to find my way along too. And
yeah. Well, no doubt you have many experiences. Now let's all put our shoes, let's all put our feet in your shoes as it is and walk around Bethel. So now let's go to this thought. You worked other places in your life, right? Not just at Watchtower?
Oh, yes, I did. I could do counting and type. I learned typing when I was a kid. Today, some people don't learn typing until they go to college. But back then, by the time a girl was usually, by the time you're 16, you're a good typist because they kind of school you back then for office work. And so I do shorthand, and so I worked for Aetna Life Insurance, and I worked for some independent companies to support myself when, especially part-time, because I was either pioneering or something. And by the time I went to Bethel, I here in Tennessee, we were here 6 years. We came from West Palm Beach, where the need was greater. And I had a very excellent job here. And so I did accounting, and I became an office manager. So we came with this great, and we bought a house, and we had to settle in. And Joe was just starting his job as a plumber with a contractor here who's building homes. So development. And so Joe became the the plumber at this development, and I worked half a day for the same man that Joe worked for.
Yeah, well, the reason why I bring this up, Barbara, is now working at Bethel and working on the outside. Well, give us what the difference would be. Give us what was different about being an outside work and not a Bethelite and working at Bethel. Give us the answer.
Well, I've never worked in an industry. I've never worked with this crowds of people, and always at smaller offices, so you don't have people watching you. In a big company, you have lots of rules. In an small office and in a small company, you don't have rules, so that you have to fit in. One time, working in engineering, I had an experience which was not a happy-finding experience. I had mentioned this before, that the overseer didn't want me because he said I was overqualified. And I really was for what they wanted me to do in that department. So it wasn't going to be accounting. And but the other men overruled him. They're all, I would say, 8 elders, and who were engineers and so forth. So we got to be very good friends, this overseer of that department. But initially, what he was concerned about is I was going to be a know-it-all woman and start causing divisions, because some women do that and some men do that too. So so I had a lot of experience, and he thought I would be unhappy. But one day he criticized me. He called me in his office. He criticized me because when the secretary pool was out in the open area, and when a young man would walk by and say hello or good day, good morning, whatever, I always replied, and I talked to him for a minute or two. But the man who was over that department, over the world construction work, when I came to Bethel, he talked to me about making these lonely kids. You're a mom here, because he was a father of 5. And he says, be a mom. And so that's why I made an additional effort to do that. Well, the overseer of the department didn't like that. And he says, you stop them, or they stop, and then you chat a minute and you look them right in the eye. And I thought, what the heck does that mean? Well, I don't know to this day. He was cold as a finch anyway, but he treated his people not very good, and eventually lost the position. And
well, you mentioned we had a talk. I mean, you and I talked this week, Barbara. You and I talked this week, and we talked about how women are treated at Bethel. You mentioned that they're treated, like second-class citizens. Now, you had an event that took place in the infirmary. Talk to us about the infirmary at Bethel. Then tell us how that works. How many doctors did they have? What happens when you got sick, real sick? Can you give us a little idea about that?
Well, okay. Remember, for many years, there was only a few hundred people at Bethel. So in the late 70s and early 80s, it just exploded. That's of all the years of this organization, that was the growth. By 84, when it was the year the United Nations proclaimed peace and security, people were coming in the organization so quickly. So we assumed that, this is the end. They're coming in, and they brought so many new people in. But for years, there's only one doctor, Dr. Dixon, and there was a nurse, Sophie. Everybody, even Joe was there in the 50s. Sophie was the nurse. So if you were ill and you stayed in your room, and usually the housekeeper would notify the infirmary that John Jones would say is in his room sick. Well, Sophie would come. She was a nurse. So Sophie would find out what your problem was and take your temperature if it's the flu, give you some aspirin. Or remember, these are mostly young men. So Sophie was there for them. But for people my age, I was in my 40s, I didn't need Sophie. If I was ill, I could take care of myself. But still, the rules are the rules. So they came to see you, which was good. And then they started to bring in a few more doctors. Well, doctors are hard pressed to find. And when we were there, Dr. Howard came in. He was, I think, an orthopedic. I think, if I remember correctly, he was an orthopedist. And when he came in, he began to practice as an intern. He went out of his field, and he had a wife and a daughter. And so sometimes this became a handicap because they needed doctors desperately. And it wasn't his field, generally thinking, but he did okay because he'd been through medical school. But sometimes he'd get it wrong because he was treating people of all ages. Something that people on the outside of Bethel, and you have to remember, we are everything in our lives built around our home, and that home was Bethel. So they had to provide everything that you would normally provide for yourself in your own home, and they couldn't with such an increase, they couldn't get it together fast enough. So that's for sure, and there were definite problems. Before they'd let a guy who was there 10 years could get married. I mean, way before I came on the scene. And so these women came in, and most of the time they're housekeepers. So then they get pregnant and they'd leave. And those who didn't like Bethel, that kind of life, industrial life, they'd get pregnant purposefully so they could leave Bethel. And that was fine. It was understood. So I'm not complaining about it. It's just human. All the human attributes are on display when you are in Bethel, living with 4,000 brothers and sisters. And maybe somebody will notice you, and you never even know that they exist, but they notice you. And so then they might come over and introduce themselves. Or there's at your table, there's 10 at a table, and you become close friends with some at the table. It's just widen your perspective mentally and picture living with all these strangers and having to have a smile on your face all the time when you got down to that dining room. So with the sickness, that's a big problem. Of course, we all went through the pandemic. We know what a big problem it could be. Well, the flu could go through Bethel. Joe went through the Asian flu in the 50s when he was at Bethel. And it was just Sophie. Then he said Dr. Dixon wasn't there all the time. And they ran her ragged because they were all so sick, so many of the people at Bethel. But as I said, there was only like 200 at the time he was there, or maybe a little more. So the infirmary had to grow, but it was hard to find doctors, and they had to deal with psychological issues too. And that was a time where they did not encourage you to go for therapy at all, or take any drug, anti-anxiety pill or antidepressant pills. No, that was not in favor. And so that's different. When I left Bethel in the 90s, they were already, especially after I left, because I had introduced to all of the governing body a package of material on the child abuse. It was done orderly through the Awake editor. He gave them the package. Well, I've talked about that before. It was on child abuse, how big the problem was. But it was also in the package were letters from therapists who were witnesses showing that they've got to change their attitude. And the letters were very, very well written. And these were professional witnesses who were in the medical profession. Okay. And so a year after that, there was a elders school, and that's when they stopped prohibiting the Friends from seeking mental health therapy of some sort, and also medication. In fact, it was shortly after we left that they brought in permanently a psychiatrist or someone in that field. Perhaps I remember correctly, I think the man that came in had quite a practice that he left to come in to help. And it was absolutely a necessity to have that. I mean, you needed someone to talk to as a younger person, and you're maturing. And if somebody to talk to, you haven't got a mom and dad there to talk to, and they have problems, you know. We all know that. I'm not talking.
Well, let me ask you this, Barbara. I'm just curious. Now, what you just said there, that statement makes a lot of sense to me. You got a lot of young kids. Mom and dad isn't there. You know, they're undergoing problems in their life. Did you ever see any drug abuse or alcoholism among some of these people?
Oh, there's plenty of alcohol use in Bethel. Always has been. I'm telling you. I'm not dramatizing. I know. In fact, that was the big silly joke. Let's put it that immature joke that we all made. On certain floors, we had certain people that lived there who were alcoholics, and on that floor, you knew on Monday morning that the garbage can would have a lot of bottles in it of alcohol. There were some women at Bethel. One gentleman at Bethel, who, if I mentioned his name, people who have been around the organization for a long time, they'd be shocked. His wife was a drunk, absolutely a drunk. When I got transferred to writing, eventually she heard about it. And when we first came into Bethel, we were assigned to his table. He was our table head. And so we got to meet his wife, of course, but she rarely came down for breakfast. But he was in Bethel. They were in Bethel for eternity, it seemed like. And even though you're supposed to come down to Bethel, we rarely saw her. She had a hangover all the time, I guess. I'm just making light of that, but it's serious. So when I got transferred out of engineering to writing, and I had to go, our bathroom was being cleaned on writing floor. So I had to walk up the stairs and go to the next floor, use their bathroom. And that floor was where her department was. And she came in to the bathroom and was washing my hands. And she came in and headed right over. I mean, the purpose of her coming to the bathroom was not to talk to me, but she came when she saw me, and I know she was suffering from a hangover. It was obvious, and she slurred her words, and she said she heard, and she was really antagonistic, and she says, "I hear you are in in writing, and I can tell you." Then she mentioned that my overseer, the one I was assigned to, and I worked with, he was the overseer of the Proclaimers book. And she said, "I'll tell you." And she took her finger and I was standing at the sink, and I turned around when she walked in. And when I did, I stood there and said, "Good morning." And she came over and she pointed that finger right into my chest. And she said, "You should know about his and what he did." And blah, blah, blah. I stood there. I already knew that there were rumors about her drinking, and but they put up with it at Bethel because I think because I had heard other things. I heard that, when they were at Bethel years and years and years ago, I go in that 82. What if you went in the 50s and you were a young bride, and this is 20, 30 years later? They came in, they didn't have a bathroom in their rooms, husbands and wives, couples like that, no bathroom. You had to go down the hall. You had women had a community bathroom, like in the army or so. And the years and years, some of these women wanted children. They were just human. So just picture this. Don't talk about religion here. I'm sure this goes on in all kinds of places that where people give up their freedom. I'm not talking about jail, but their freedom for a purpose. And maybe nuns or people in those big homes. And anyway, as time goes on, they go through menopause. Women go through the menopause at Bethel. It ain't pleasurable, I'll tell you, when you have all kinds of issues and hormonal issues, and you're cranky and crabby. But I think men go through menopause too. They just don't. Well, it's a menopause, so, because they're cranky and crabby when they get into their certain ages, in their late 40s and their 50s. There's a lot of bodily changes, and we go through that all our life, bodily changes. We're not the same when we're 50 as we were at 20. I'm not talking about energy or health. I'm talking about hormonally changes. And some of those women, they gave up a lot. And some of those women hated housekeeping, but they did it because their husbands were needed, and they loved their religion, and they loved their husband. And so the years took a toll. I know one of the women, the older woman, she was interesting. She was different than some of the other ones. She loved the congregation. She left Bethel every Saturday morning, and she stayed at the congregation at someone's house every Saturday night and every weekend. And to stay at Bethel, her husband, he gave his permission. And they had an arrangement that went on 20, well, I was there like 20 years. She never stayed the weekend unless there was a Gilly graduation or something. And she went out in service on Saturday, and then she would attend the meeting. He joined him on a Sunday when he came to the congregation. People made different arrangements for themselves to survive living in that kind of life.
But you could tell, Barbara, I'm sure, being there, it'd be like being in school or being in an institution.
How about college?
Well, yeah, you could tell. I mean, that there were people that were unhappy, like that woman, like that sister was in the bathroom. But now, let me ask you this, okay? Let's move on here to this thought. How about people vying for attention? When I was there and being interviewed by the Watchtower by Garrett Loesch, I noticed that all of the Bethelites, when the governing body member would walk by, they were all vying for attention. They'd take the magazines out and start making believe they're reading them, and they would really show a lot of, I should respect and honor, I suppose, is what you'd call it. But they were all vying for attention. Did you see that? Did you see some Bethelites going out of their way to appear to be so theocratic?
Well, not really the young ones. The young ones are trying to find their footing. Like when our son was there, he was in the press room, and they're trying to find a place for themselves. Finding out who likes who, because you find a buddy. It's just the human stuff. But then as they get older and they stay at Bethel, and then they see that because they get bored, and so if they can't find an interest for themselves, they don't stay. But those that like or want to stay at Bethel, there's all kinds of people. Some couldn't stand institutional life, but I think when they get a little older, like I'm going to tell you about, before I said there was this fella in his 30s that was overseer over in the tape duplicating department with all the women there. I'll tell you, he was hard on the women. It was hard on. He never smiled. He was just he was odd. I mean, he was a nice looking man, but he didn't appear to be happy. He was single, and he didn't make friends easily, and he wasn't kind. And when you have all these different women, women have problems. They got issues, and some of the men were fabulous, especially the married ones. So they're married to a woman. They know the idiosyncrasies of the differences between the male and the female, and they respect it. But you get a single overseer, you have a problem. And these somebody like him, what they begin to do when they get into their 30s, so maybe they're Bethel 10 years or maybe less than that, they're seeking the 3 P's, and that's the prestige, power, and position. And I know what I'm talking about because that's what I was told by the Awake editor. He said that's the biggest problem here with the men. They want the 3 P's. And but a younger person who comes in and he signs up for, back then you had to sign up for 3 years. My husband signed up for 3, then it went to 4. That didn't work out for many years, because then they got it down to 1 year. You sign up for 1 year, and then you have a meeting with somebody on a committee who you tell them whether you like it, and they tell you whether they like you, and that they want you to stay. So see all these things you get to deal with. They're watching you the first year to see if you're good Bethel material. Some are not, and so at that 7th month when they meet with you, they say, "You're overseer. We talked with your overseer in the department, and it doesn't look like you're happy here." Whatever, blah blah blah. But now a man who has made an overseer in a department, it's for his spirituality, not for his expertise in the whatever they're doing in there. But I mean, eventually you get to be an expert in the department, even though you're the overseer. You're learning the department, and I talked about that once before. Let
me jump in here for a second, Barb, while we're still on the subject.
Yeah, because I can keep going here.
I want to jump in so we can kind of keep it right together, because people have so many questions. So now the age limit, what was the age limit of a Bethelite? You know, when they were called into Bethel, they signed up for Bethel. When would they usually have to get their assignment to move on? Was there an age limit to that?
No. They live and they get old and die, from Bethel. There was a lot of old people, and are to this day. They've got a nursing home up there near Warwick, and that's full. Full of old people. They won't put them out if you've given your life to them. Your youth and your mid-age and whatever, they keep you, and so that's good, but they're not.
Well, let me stop you right there. I mean, they will keep you. We hear so many stories, though, of older ones, getting the boot. And
no, that's not older people. That was when they were decreasing the family, and they let people go they didn't really need anymore. And some of them were there 20 years. Couples that were there 20 years, I know personally. I mean, I used to before I was young, who were there 20 years and they were given their working papers. It was very, very hard.
Well, I'll tell you what I came across. In fact, I found it fascinating just in the last month. But anyways, this man, he sends us information, announcements and reminders that they read to the congregation. So in one of the latest articles or letters he sent to me, they were saying that Bethelites can apply, I believe it was when they're 17 or 18. And now they go all the way up. You can apply for Bethel even up to 55 years old. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd be going at 55.
But that doesn't mean you're permanent, though. You can apply for Bethel. They'll keep you that proverbial year. Then they decide whether they need you, or if they don't need you anymore, because they need you. Usually, if you had a special skill, you know right away that it might be just a year or two. And because a lot of people have special skills, but they thought they were too old. So they tell them, you're not too old at 55. We'll take you. But it's not that they're going to put you in their nursing home in 20 years. So many of the turnover nowadays is great for special skills. And when those skills are not needed, then but you know that in your mind. I mean, when they were really buying buildings in Brooklyn, they needed special skilled people, and of course they needed engineers and people in the construction field, and they were told ahead of time, you got to understand that we might not need you anymore in a year or two. So that was hard on the wives, absolutely hard on the wives, because they gave up a home. Some of those folk sold their homes, and then they weren't needed anymore after they finished the project, and so they had to leave and start all over. It's not especially a people organization. It's an organization that is there for itself, not necessarily its members. And just like the word member, they don't even use the word member. No Jehovah's Witnesses is a member of Jehovah's Witnesses any longer, and has been that way. I think the book on it came out about a year ago. I think a year. And so it's not. This is not an organization that is there for the members, and that's a big problem. Industry has found that out over the years too, and that's why they make it for a successful industry to continue. For an industry to continue and be successful, get that right. They have to be mindful of the employees, and that's never been the case with this organization. The people are second. In fact, it's sad to say, but God is second. You talk all the time about it, but God is second. The organization is number one.
Well, there you go. Oh, no, in fact, this is fine. We got a lot of questions we want to ask you. I mean, we've got people writing in. I've got them coming in to me. And we're going to keep you on a little bit. Can we keep you on for about another half hour? And I also want to open up the lines. But a couple of questions here that people wanted you to answer. They were wondering about service. Now, was it mandatory that you had to go out Saturday and Sunday? How was it that you and Joe would treat the service arrangement?
We would go out in service on Sunday morning. Our meeting was in the afternoon. So we went to the congregation in the morning and met with them at the Kingdom Hall. That's most of the Bethelites. We filled our car with the Bethelites. And so then somebody usually had lunch for the Bethelites. I mean, it's like 6 of us or something like that. And every Sunday when we went out in service, then we go to somebody's apartment and have lunch, and then we went to the meeting. Some Bethelites, the older, that ones had been there many years, they did more service. They would go out on Saturday, and they didn't. There was no requirement. I'll tell you this. This one is a doozy, I think. Anyway, you think of this as the house of God and services first. It is not first. There have been problems galore over the years because you're assigned to a congregation, and these mature men are assigned to these, spiritual mature men, elders who are brought into Bethel, assigned to a congregation. And this is the truth of what happened in those years that I was there. And I'm sure it happened before that. I just know what I saw, heard, what my husband went through, others went through. So some in the congregation, and especially up in Walkill, And my son had that problem at Patterson when he was assigned. He was there 16 years. So towards the end, I'd say 11 years, 12 years, something, he was taken up to Patterson. And they had he had to do his job up there, whatever he did. I know what he did, but nobody cares. So the congregation elders expect that these men who come here, there, who are elders, should be doing a lot of elder work at the congregation level. And our son actually had an issue over this. He wasn't showing up very much to the meetings, and he was an elder. And just is not an incidental thing. This happened over and over again. So then the elders in the congregation counsel the elder from Bethel. And so what happened with my son's wife, she's coming to the meetings alone in a core group of Bethelites. And one of the elders spoke to her and said, "We don't see Lance. He's an elder. He'll be removed if he doesn't come to more meetings up here." And they had just been transferred up there because of my son's skills. And my daughter-in-law cried and cried. By the time she was home, she had cried. She was young and she was insulted and she couldn't get over this. So the information went back to headquarters, and Lloyd Berry, governing body member, he got involved in all of this, made an announcement, the Bethelites, that all the congregations around got letters for the elders to read. People are brought into Bethel to serve Bethel, not to serve the local congregation. And they are not to be put on the same have the same viewpoint of the other elders. So Bethel came first. And it did in my case. I missed many meetings from the writing department. I had to work overtime because on many times Sunday I'd be in the office, hardly anybody in the building, but I had to get my work done, and because there was a deadline. And but our congregation understood that they had taken Bethelites before, but up in Patterson was a new construction project. And the congregation around there never had that experience before with these Bethelites. So here the Bethelite elders are in their congregation. I never see hide nor hair of them. But this is the rule, that they come here to Bethel. They didn't come here to work with your congregation. So does that clear up that?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's what I like to hear. They like to hear just what goes on in service and how it is being a Bethelite. So, anyways, let's do this. Let's open up the lines here. I'm sure we got people who want to say things, and if you'd like to, I'm going to also, if you're listening in on YouTube, I'm going to put up a number on the screen so you'll see it. If you want to call in, ask Barbara questions, she's here tonight, and she'll be glad to answer that question. Let me put the telephone number up now. Let me get it in my little file here, and we'll put that number up so you can see it to call into the program. So there it is right there. The number is 727-731-6701, and we'd love to have you call in, say hello to Barbara. But in the meantime, is there anyone on our telephone line that would like to say hello to Barbara? All you have to do is hit *6. Have you been listening to this tonight? Have you thinking, wow, I'd like to ask Barbara a question. So here's your time to do it. So go ahead. We do have 831 coming in. Go ahead, 831.
Hey, thank you. Hi, thank you so much, Barbara. We missed you. I just want to go over a couple of points. So one, there were situations where women had to use a communal bathroom in the hallway. Was that true?
Absolutely. You didn't have enough pioneer time. It took a few years. I mean, if you never pioneered before, you didn't have any time pioneering. You got a room on a floor that had communal bathrooms, and that was girls. And in fact, the architect, when he came in, and I know this case very well because I studied with his wife before years and years before she ever met him, and converted him to the organization. They had a terrible time. They were put in oh, I can't think of the name of the building now, but they had a communal bathroom, and I mean, they were in their 50s, and he was an architect. He made very, very good money, and she was used to finest things. She barely, well, it lasted 4 years before she had fell apart. But they eventually got it. They never needed Bethel. Let me finish that, because I'll tell you, when George Couch, who was over all the homes, found out the circumstances of this, and that they are, and I'm sure he talked to the overseer at engineering, and they needed that architect desperately. And so I'm sure that that's what happened, is why they changed them, and finally she got a private bathroom. So you can slip through the cracks.
Was this, Barbara, was this bathroom, communal bathroom? I'm trying to ascertain, was this bathroom used by men and women?
No. Women's bathrooms, and there was a men's bathrooms.
Okay, that's all I want to know. So basically, it sounds like you go to Bethel, you're in a fish bowl. You're not only being watched every second, poked and prodded, but you have other fish in the fish bowl that are biting at your tail and nipping at your fins. And you have no privacy, no rights, and the bullies get away with murder.
No.
And it sounds like they're afraid of women with brains. Thank you so much.
Well, some of them appreciated women with brains. And I knew some really wonderful women with brains at Bethel. And I knew wonderful men who appreciated those brains. So, no, it's just life. This is all kinds of people. But, it works its way out if you're patient. And we had pioneer time when we were at Bethel. So we got a room in the towers. We had our own bathroom. I tell you, I worried more about that than I did anything else. If I'm not going to get a bathroom, I told my husband, I got to have a bathroom. And so, but by that time, they figured it out. But still, I mean, they became better about this, needing so many couples because they need the guy. And so they were trying harder to make living in Bethel better, and they didn't succeed always. So many left. In the infirmary, I'll give you an example, gals. Once they got this big increase of people, they needed a bigger infirmary, and they needed more people to. If a lot, maybe 50 people showed up one morning feeling lousy, so they have to find out what your ailments are. So they took a bunch of rooms and opened them up and made one big room, and they put little half walls. It was I laugh when I think about it, but it was serious. So you found yourself talking, you're sick, right? And all kinds of ailments that people have. And you could hear from one booth to the next. And they assigned a young man to interview you. And they have, of course, they got a paper and pencil, and they're asking you all these questions about your health that day or this week. How long has this been going on? Well, they ask personal questions. And it could be heard in the next booth, or another one. Well, I gotta tell you, this did not go well with these women who came in at my age, because their husbands were specialists in a field and needed. I'm telling you, some of those gals, they just either were furious or had nervous breakdowns. They didn't last. They left Bethel after the year. And I had the opportunity of it. Do I have enough time, Rick, to tell my story about the infirmary? Are you there, Rick?
I'm right here, Barbara. Yeah, we got more questions coming in here. I'm just reading.
I wanted to tell my story about the infirmary. Can I do it?
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Okay. I was there at Bethel 2 years. I was healthy when I went to Bethel. But remember, I'm 42, so that's I'm putting some age on, and I have a problem. And so I felt lousy, and I love that word, by the way. And so I went to the infirmary, and they gave me the doctor. They gave me a physical and whatever, and they decided to send me on to the doctor they used outside of Bethel. Now remember, a doctor they got to use outside has to respect the blood issue. Well, there was one, since Dr. Dixon had been the major doctor there for years and years and years, he had made a friend of a doctor on the outside. That was a nice guy, and he took all the patients. He was no problem with blood with this guy. And so they made an appointment for me to see him, and I went, and they were trying to figure out what's wrong with me. And so the doctor who was here, I'm about 42. He's like 65 or something like that. And so he was conversing with me over my health and whatever. He said, can't really figure out what's wrong with you. He said, but I would like to take you dancing. And I had to put up with this thing. And I go back to Bethel, I said, and he'd make a report and say, I don't know, I don't understand what her problem is. So after a while you think, well, maybe it's your brain or something. That's the problem. So they sent me back to him. I said, when can we go dancing? I mean, the guy was serious. And so I tried to make a joke out of this, but it was getting annoying. And what do? You don't have money anymore. You have no insurance. You got to do it the Bethel way. They're only using this guy. They don't have a bunch of doctors to send you to. They pick and choose. I should have gone to a woman's doctor. I didn't need this guy who could try to one size fits all. All right. So the last time I saw him, it was really bad. I could hardly walk. And he says, we're going to schedule you for exploratory surgery. So they make all the arrangements for this. And I go into the Long Island Hospital and I have surgery. And so 2 or 3 days. And let me tell you, that doctor was my surgeon. Okay. The one I'm seeing, he's a surgeon. So the day after surgery, or 2 days, I don't remember, a woman comes into my room and she wants to know how I was feeling. She was dressed in, she was absolutely a medical person. And she said, how you doing? And I told her I was doing very well. And she said, good. We discussed the situation. And I said, exactly what do you do? What did you do in part of this treatment? And she says, I'm your surgeon. I said, no, you're not. Dr. Doe, I don't want to say his name. I said, he's my surgeon. Oh, she said, oh, no, he's not your surgeon. He lost his surgery license years ago. They didn't know that at Bethel. They were sending us to people who we should never have been sent to. We did not have a choice. That is a mess that they were in with this growth, and they just didn't understand the situations. They treated especially the women, and I don't think that women are hard to deal with. I'm one, but they didn't understand this. The people that made these decisions on these committees, these guys, they just called it wrong. So when I was very surprised. So here I come back. I'm recovering from surgery, and I got sick again. And so and my health has always been very good. And that's the first surgery I ever had, and I never had again. I've never been under the knife like that. So I come back and I'm in my room for, they gave you 6 weeks to recover. So I'm not getting well, and I'm getting weaker and weaker. I was bones and britches. I lost so much weight. And And so I go to the infirmary, and there's the doctor who used to be the orthopedic, and now he's an internist. And he says, we're going to send you back to the doctor. I said, you're not going to send me back to him. I won't go. And so he said, he did not like that I said that. And I spoke up because, he's the doctor. And I said, he said, why? And I said, first of all, I said I was ill and he wanted to take me dancing. He was interested in dating me. And then I found out he's a surgeon, but he lost his license years ago. Did you know that? He goes and he gets the records and all starts looking. He said, I'm shocked. I said, would you send your wife to someone like this? And he was so surprised. That started the ball rolling. Then I made an appointment with somebody at headquarters that I knew, but I thought he was actually Jairus's, governing body Jairus's assistant. But I did not know, because most Bethelites didn't know, but he was really of the committee he was the head of the home committee. And that's a big deal at Bethel, that committee, very powerful. And he was the head of that. But they kept that quiet. All we do is he's Jairus's assistant. And so he had multi-jobs. And so I found that out, and I made an appointment with him. And I went to see him, and I had a long talk. And because I was in business before, I was not squeamish about talking to him. And I asked him the same question. I said, his wife was Lorraine. I said, would you let your wife go through what I went through? And I spelled it out. I told him everything that you guys don't want to hear. And so anyhow, eventually I got well, and I did get the proper treatment. And my son was walking home from the factory one day, and this man, it was the evening, they worked overtime. And this man had been in he's not at the factory, he's at the office building. And they saw each other on the street, and they knew each other. And this guy called out to our son, and he says, wait up, I want to talk to you. And he told my son, because our son told me immediately. And he says, I want you to hear what so-and-so said. And he says, I want to tell you, everybody at Bethel has your mother to thank, because she came forward to tell us what was going on in the infirmary. That was not just that problem. There were other issues. We were like cattle, but nobody knew. Everybody was afraid to say anything. I had nothing to lose. I had a home. We still had a home. We did not sell it. I still could come home. Joe could start his plumbing business up again. I had a way out, but other people didn't have a way out. And I knew I was the age of these people who were running this place. So I talked to him as a peer. And I'm not pinning a medal on me. That's what goes on. Now, there's plenty of women like me now. Many young women are like me now, but not back 40 years ago. That's the difference. And so they grew and things got better, but the bodies fell over the years. That was the saddest thing, when people got caught up in something. That wasn't the only situation that reared its ugly head with that many people. So they should have had a public relations office for Bethelites, but they didn't. And you just had your overseer at work, and there were so many these people problems. But it was a growing thing. I'm not saying this went on, I'm sure, in all industry years ago, but Bethel was worse, because as far as I was concerned, because people didn't matter. It was always the organization matters more than the people. And I hopefully that's changed over the years, but they don't need, they're not a publishing business anymore. So they don't need all the people that they used to need when they were second the second largest publishing company in the world. Reader's Digest was number one. Watchtower was number two at one time. So
That's amazing, Barbara. They all love that story of the infirmary. They can't believe it. They cannot believe it. But yeah, no. Anyways, we got some more people. Can you stay on for another 10 minutes?
oh, I say I can say day and night. I never run out.
Yeah, I don't know where you get your energy. I'll tell you that.
Well, I'm Polish, you know.
Well, that's true too. The Polish people, they can really move in the right direction. They're strong people. So, anyways, we've got who'd like to ask Barbara a question? Do we have? Well, I got a question here. If no one wants to ask one, but this question, someone wants you to answer if you can. Do you remember how much you made at Bethel? Did you and Joe make the same amount of money, or did he make more than you?
Oh no, we got the same amount when we went in. Let me think. I don't know. I think it was 70 or I know we got a raise. So I think we were making, when we left, we were making $80 each. So it was enough for your subway. And this is the way they say, okay, we give you enough for your subway tokens and for the women to buy hosiery, because we had to dress up every day and no pants allowed, you know. So we had to have dresses and nice looking shoes and whatever. But you got a clothing allowance at the end of the year based on your seniority. And seniority was based on full-time service. So the longer you were at Bethel, the more seniority you had. So some of these people were there 30 years, husband and wife, 30 years each. That gives them a lot of seniority. They can then bid on better rooms that become vacant, because that's how that works. And once a year, they did that. And also, you got more that once a year. Oh, I got a story about that. Once a year, you can you get your money. So we had when we left, I think I'm trying to think, because of Joe's pioneering. I think we had over 20 years. And so we had a goodly amount. But by the time we left, when we went to Bethel, we had purchased this house 6 years before, and we were remodeling. It was an older house because we had spent so much time in the full-time work. We just loved our life, and money was a second. And so when we went to Bethel, we didn't have all that much money. And like some of them had good bank accounts, but we didn't. So when we left, I told Lloyd Berry, my overseer in writing, in October that we were leaving. And he said, "When are you leaving?" I said, at the end of the year, December, last day in December. So he said, "Why?" And I told him the reason, with my mother's problems with her legs. And he said, "Why are you waiting so long? Why don't you, if it needs you, you should go as soon as possible." I said, "We can't. We have to wait until the end of the year for our clothing allowance, so we have some money. By that time, we would have gotten maybe 1,000 or something, because it's a certain amount a year, $250 or something like that." And by that, as I can't really remember, but I know that we would have had at least 1,000 or 1,200 each, and it would have been something to live on. Even though my mother and father would be living next door, and we wouldn't starve to death, but that we needed it. We had to get home. So he said, "I see." Well, 2 days later, there was an announcement at lunchtime. And instead of the prayer, they had the prayer, but right away his voice came over and instead of just saying, he said, "Everybody remain in your seats. I want to make an announcement." And and then we had prayer. And the announcement was, if you are leaving Bethel, anytime you're leaving, you can get your clothing allowance. And so you do not have to wait to the end of the year. So when I got to work that morning, I asked him about this, why he said he didn't know. He said, I had no idea all the years I was here. He was there. He said, I didn't know you had to wait because he wasn't going to leave Bethel. So why would he even be concerned? He had probably 40 years seniority, and his wife had 40 years. Their end of years clothing allowance was in the high thousands. And a lot of people have no idea that, you talk about the green handshake, and that's how come people who at Bethelites who were there a long time, they make money. No, they don't need your money. They get that clothing allowance on seniority. And I mean, Arthur Worsley was at Bethel, well, I don't know, 60, 70. So he had so much seniority that at the end of the year, he probably could have bought a car. And they'd have no way to spend it. That's what Harry Polian said to me.
Whoop, we just lost Barbara's voice there. Barbara, we lost your voice. Yeah, something went crazy there. Let's see what's going on. Let me bring her. Something happened there. We'll see what happened. We're going to exit the solo. So, Barbara, you froze up on us. Your computer seemed to freeze up on us. Don't you worry. But no, you did a great job tonight. We're just about done with the program anyways. But something did go wrong with your computer here. I'm not sure. It's frozen. The internet or something maybe went out at your house. I'm not sure. Well, Barbara, anyways, thank you for coming on. And we'll end the program right here. You did a great job. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but you did a great job. And we're looking forward to you coming on in another 2 weeks with your program. Barbara, I guess you froze up on us for a little bit.
Oh.
You're all right. Listen, and anyways, some reason, something might have went wrong on your end, but no problem. You did a really good job, Barbara.
Did you hear me saying about those who were in full-time service 40 years or more?
We heard all that. Yeah, we heard everything. Yeah, we heard all of that. Now they're getting their allowance and what have you. So
supported cars, but most of the older folk, Bethel provided transportation for them. They didn't have to have cars. So there were the perks, It wasn't, it's not all down. I'm not wonderful people to associate with. And some that we were alike in belief. And all we thought about was saving people's lives through our work. And so it was a very pleasant time, except when they had people junk. And, some of the overseers were hard on the young men. And so Joe ran into that. And so he said, some of those overseers wouldn't have lasted. In fact, I'll tell you, the one that was over the tape duplicating department, I just heard recently, and he's been there, I can't tell you, 30 years or something. And he was recently disfellowshipped. So that was amazing. And so he was not a happy camper, apparently, for a long time. He wasn't back even then. And we kind of suspect what the problem was, but we're not going to say. But, we all have these idiosyncrasies. We all have our ways. And so we don't condemn others. We just know that this is not a perfect organization. They talk the talk, but the reality is never faced by it, especially from after I think Nor. I mean, it was two organizations. They were cruel. He was a cruel man in many ways. Other people loved him, but others hated him. So you talk to some of the older ones from back in those years, they absolutely hated him. And he had favorites. And I have paperwork where it talks about Covington and Nor. And Covington, he says in an interview, he said Nor was a snake. And he said a cobra. looking to where he could strike at you. Yeah. And then they passed the rumors around that Covington was a drunk. And I think I talked about that before because he had enemies. So that's, that's not paradise, is it? So there are things that go on behind the scenes between people. And the rank and file never really know about it unless they're told or they get caught up in something. So I was at the age where I wasn't too young that nobody tell me things, and I wasn't too old that they were disinterested in not telling me. And so I heard a lot of stuff.
Well, I'll tell you what, Barbara, you really gave the audience a lot of information tonight, and you did a really, really good job. And I appreciate you coming on. Now, you're coming back on in 2 weeks. You're coming back on in
I'll have to figure out with you what to talk about because there's so many things. I don't want to just talk about the bad. I'm a people person, and I was a very, very active witness because I loved it.
Yeah.
And I'm the last one that people would ever think that would leave it. But they had blinders on my eyes. It's not that I left it over people. I left it over, that they were bad people. I left it over not the religious belief, because I was still a believer when I left. I never really looked enough while I was there. I think when I was working on the Proclaimers book, I started to get suspicions because I was reading things that would historically and books that I had never seen before. So I was beginning to suspect it, but you didn't want to admit it. And I liked my life as a witness. So it was an adventure, and but you move on when that doesn't fit any longer.
Well, what we'll do is I'll get a hold of you in the next week or so.
Find somebody. If somebody has a suggestion, I wish Joe could talk to you, but he's not like me. He's more outgoing when he was younger, but he has a memory problem. His memory is not. My memory is pretty good for my age, but his isn't. And so I'm not saying that he's that bad off, but he can't grab things. But I'm a woman, women talk more. Anyway.
Well, no. Well, I'll tell you what, Barbara, you do have a lot of ability, and you do love to talk to the people about Bethel and many other things, and people love you on here. That's all I'm getting is really, really good remarks about you, Barbara. So
if I'm useful, that's okay. That's a good thing too. We feel like we have community with because we're all former witnesses, so we have something to replace what we lost, and people need people, and the social media today is really making a dent in people's interactions with one another. So this is good for me too, as much as it for you all. I just fell into a situation at one time where I would have never dreamed that I would have learned what I did, and was a confidant on something that was so highly secretive.
Well, Barbara, you certainly have a lot of memories. Now, I'm going to contact you this week, and we're going to put together a program for 2 weeks. So I'm looking forward to that. And I appreciate you coming on tonight. And you're really making a difference here. You're getting a lot of people listening into the network. So we all thank you for that. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And listen, if you like this program, like it. Give it a like. In fact, we want to keep Barbara coming on here, and it's amazing. We want to hear everything she has to say. So
they can make suggestions too. If you have a question just don't ask me anything on Trinity Solar.
Yeah. Well, if anyone
a research question, you could send it in to Rick. Since I worked on that Proclaimers book, there are things I can answer and love to do it because I still do it, and I'm a historical person.
Well, let me give them the address, the email address to send it to. If you have some suggestions on what you'd like to hear from Barbara, why don't you write me at jwworldnews@gmail.com, jwworldnews@gmail.com, and give me some thoughts, and we'll get Barbara back on here in 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
we'll go at it again.
Don't
right.
ask me any questions on the Masons. Okay.
All right,
It's part of that subject.
we
Or
want-
something legitimately historical to do with the Russells. I'm a walking encyclopedia. There are things I won't tell you about because I'm saving it for
Well, we'll see what the people want to write in about. Well, Barbara, thank you. We're going to go on to JW World News, but I want to thank you for coming on tonight, and you just keep standing tall. Say hello to Joe,
okay.
and I'll be in touch with you in the next week or so, and we'll put together another exciting program of
Okay.
Insider Tells All. Okay, thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Barbara. All right, well, there you go. There's Barbara. My goodness. I have to tell you, I mean, we're learning a lot, aren't we? We're learning a lot from Barbara. She's sharing a lot of things with us that maybe some of us have never heard before. So I think that's wonderful. So I want you to stay with us. We're not going to go anywhere now. We got more programs coming up tonight. We've got JW World News. That's coming up next right here on our Six Screens Telenetwork. And then, of course, we got a lot of news stories to talk about. We've got at 9:30, we have the Outside Story. That's with Fran and Joe, and they have an elder coming on. He's going to tell his story. He's going to tell us what went on in his reign in the Watchtower. And then, of course, at let's say 11 o'clock tonight, we've got the Red Pill from the Watchtower, and we have a man by the name of Don Brown. He's going to be coming in for Eric tonight. And then at around 1 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock, if you can't sleep, you're pacing the floors, well, come in and listen in to your favorite apostate, Apostle Babe. She'll be on somewhere around 12:30, 1 o'clock tonight. So we're looking forward to that. So let's end this program. We're going to switch over to JW World News. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us on our YouTube and Facebook channel.